Looking at how that platform view is kind of evolving, I mean, again, we've talked about the SOA foundation in the centre of the diagram there that talks about how you manifest an enterprise class level of quality of service from a computing standpoint, with the need to build a service management set of policies and a governance strategy to help drive change and implementation projects. As we move to the right, which is probably today where we probably spend more time with business in talking about how you actually implement declarative type business policies and business rules which are external to the business process logic, in fact, a way that the business can actually, again, get back control of describing business paths and process flows without actually embedding process logic spaghetti, if you will, inside the application at the business process level. These are very powerful paradigms which are an extension on the notion of SOA. If you kind of accept the premise and the proposition that we've, in introducing things like an enterprise service bus architecturally, we've now placed the mediation and the integration flow of control and those aspects of data transformation at the level of messaging into the enterprise service bus. What we're now saying is that we want to do the same at the process level to make the process much more readily adaptable, in the sense that rather than embedding process logic at the interaction level and the information and around process steps, you're actually writing now business language level declarative statements to actually change the route for a process, or actually apply a product, for example, a product update as a business rule that the business analyst can actually change in flight, on live systems without involvement, frankly, of IT. That's really the kind of dimension of the problem we're trying to now address with the latest iterations of SOA in the context of business process. And then moving to the left, this notion of, as I said before, situational applications as opposed to desktop on-the-glass mashups, but really talking about the role and context of the usage profile that for your consumers as you produce services. And that's very much a powerful characteristic of Web 2.0 technology that we're looking to adopt in the business context as we move forward. In terms of the business service, again, another way of looking at it again is as we go up the chart here, and Gartner talks about SOBAs and service-oriented business applications. We talk about composite business services, but semantically we're talking about the same things. It's very much about raising the level of agility, the flexibility, and the ability of IT to support dynamic change in response to the changing business dynamics. So again, another expression as we move from the simple integration level through to service-oriented applications. Very much the paradigm that we are looking to promote, and certainly in terms of the adoption cycles, that's kind of where the debate is centred these days around the use of business rules and business policies. In terms of our approach and a recommendation, if you like, in terms of best practice, again, there are different ways to look at architecture at the business level, at the application level, and at the technical infrastructure level. And either starting point, if you like, are equally valid, and the important thing is to assemble knowledge and to understand which artifacts currently exist in your existing ecosystem that you can leverage value from. And you can take value from what is currently in the head of a person in the business community who understands the business process, or from a piece of value in a PowerPoint presentation or in a Visio diagram, and start to codify that in a way that actually helps support the design and implementation process through the cycle. In the same way that you can analyse your existing information and service models to help describe and put together a strategy for harnessing value and exposing new application opportunities. So again, it's not each customer situation I find is going to be different, but the point is to actually assemble an inventory of what is powerful value-add assets that you may have that can support a more agile business environment. In terms of different starting points, again, business patterns, if you will, described from a layered point of view, again, all are equally valid insofar as where you might want to start. You may have a pure IT-centered view, I think as Dale was describing, if you will, bottom-up, or you may have a more transformational in nature. Some of those IT transformations, by the way, are very much at the business model level. If you're talking about a telco or a bit-based business where IT is fundamental to the business model in of itself, then they're almost transformational by their very nature. So again, it's horses for courses, and the point is, we have experience, and we've certainly built what we would term agility metrics against each of these kind of starting points to actually benchmark what is a definition of success in terms of implementation paths. But the important thing here is, again, to be cognizant of where you're needing to go in terms of business outcome, and to take whatever path is something that's realistic and realisable in terms of a measured business outcome. And typical adoption timescales need to be in the order of 6 to 9 months, frankly, in this climate. Any more than that, and the CFO certainly loses interest very quickly. In terms of some of the melding of top-down to bottom-up, again, just an approach around service-oriented modelling and design. The top-down around how you look at business requirements from a business process model. If you have those artefacts, then fantastic. That's a great way to start to identify candidates for new services. In the same way as looking at your existing IT landscape of assets is a great way of discovering perhaps where you might want to aggregate combinations of services to produce new application function. And somewhere in the middle is where you typically meet, where you can start to identify and reconcile business goals and sub-goals against those models. And all the way from design through to implementation, there are now models and tools and methods that support that approach, one of which is described in a little bit more detail here, which I won't go into now in the interest of time, but maybe is a topic for a question later, which just talks about a methodology that certainly we have and we use quite consistently in terms of how you use those two views from bottom up and top down to actually bring together better definition around the service model and to actually support an implementation strategy that's going to be effective for you. And then finally, then in conclusion for this segment, just to talk about those 4 key aspects around focus around driving agility as being a clear success definer for the business today in today's climate. The need to take control of the business process and actually find ways to give control back to the business is fundamental and incredibly valuable to the business. Recognise the consumers have a different view of what they expect in terms of how they consume those services, and we can talk about cloud computing paradigms and software as a service paradigms as we move forward. And again, they're all aspects and evolutions on what we've been talking about so far today. And again, platformed and predicated on a sound, smart SOA foundation at the infrastructure level. So with that, I'll end this segment then. Brian, back to you.
Great, Gary, thanks so much for that. A very comprehensive look at some of the best practices in SOA.